Have you ever wondered what happens when tradition becomes a death sentence and childhood innocence collides with ancient customs? In the marble halls of Dubai's most traditional royal family, where century-old marriage laws still govern modern lives and family honor is valued more than human life, 16-year-old Amina Khalil believed her wedding day would be the beginning of her fairy tale. What started as an arranged blessing would end in blood, and what began as cultural tradition would destroy two families across 3 generations. This isn't just about an arranged marriage. This is about power, childhood stolen, and how far families will go to preserve honor that was never theirs to protect. On the morning of March 18, 2024, the emergency sirens that pierced Dubai's dawn silence weren't celebrating the grand wedding that had dominated international headlines for weeks. They were the harsh wail of ambulances racing toward the Al-Zahra royal estate, where behind 40-foot golden gates and centuries of tradition, they would discover a scene that would expose the deadly cost of forced marriage in the modern world. The body of Amina Khalil, just 16 years old, lay motionless in the bridal suite that had been decorated with $2 million worth of roses and diamonds. Her wedding dress, custom designed by 3 European couturiers, was torn and stained with blood that would soon become evidence in Dubai's most controversial honor-killing trial. Standing in the corner, trembling in traditional Emirati robes worth more than most people's annual salaries, was Sheikh Mansour Al-Zahra, 58 years old, his hands shaking as he clutched the ceremonial dagger that had sealed his young bride's fate. Dubai in 2024 existed as a complex intersection of ancient tribal customs and modern international commerce, where traditional Islamic marriage laws coexisted uneasily with global human rights standards. Behind the glittering facade of tolerance and progress lay families whose power depended on maintaining customs that had governed desert tribes for over 500 years. The Al-Zahra family represented the most conservative faction of Dubai's royal hierarchy, controlling not just oil reserves worth $15 billion, but the religious and cultural institutions that defined acceptable behavior for the Emirates' traditional communities. Every marriage, every birth, every family decision was calculated to preserve bloodlines and power structures that predated the discovery of oil. For families like the Khalils, aligning themselves with royal tradition through arranged marriages represented their only path from middle-class respectability to generational wealth and influence. Amina Khalil was born on September 12, 2007, into a family where tradition and modernity fought daily battles in their middle-class Dubai home. Her father, Omar Khalil, worked as a senior manager for Dubai's Islamic Banking Authority, his career built on navigating the complex intersection of religious law and international finance. Her mother, Fatima, had been raised in a conservative Pakistani family before moving to Dubai at 18 for her own arranged marriage. From birth, Amina existed in 2 worlds simultaneously. At Dubai International Academy, she excelled in mathematics and computer science, spoke fluent English and Arabic, and dreamed of studying engineering at Cambridge University. At home, she learned traditional cooking, memorized Quranic verses, and understood that her ultimate purpose was to marry well and honor her family's reputation. "You are blessed with intelligence, Habibti," her mother would tell her during evening prayers. "But a woman's greatest blessing is a good husband who can protect and provide for her family." At 15, Amina had already been accepted into Cambridge's pre-engineering program, her exceptional grades and test scores earning her a full scholarship that would have made her the first woman in her extended family to attend university abroad. She spent hours in her bedroom, surrounded by physics textbooks and architectural drawings, designing the sustainable buildings she hoped to create across the Middle East. But Amina's academic achievements created tension within her traditional extended family, who viewed her educational success as a threat to their conservative values. Her paternal grandfather, Mahmoud Khalil, a respected imam in Dubai's oldest mosque, had been pressuring Omar to arrange Amina's marriage before her Western education made her unsuitable for a proper Islamic husband. "The girl has too many ideas," Mahmoud warned Omar during family gatherings. Education is good, but too much education makes women forget their place in Allah's design. The marriage proposal came through traditional channels in February 2024, when Sheikh Mansour Al-Zahra's family approached the Khalils through a respected marriage broker. The offer was extraordinary, a union that would elevate the middle-class Khalil family into Dubai's royal social circle, complete with a $5 million dowry, a mansion in Emirates Hills, and guaranteed positions for Omar within the royal business empire. For Omar and Fatima, the proposal represented the culmination of every sacrifice they had made raising their daughter. For their extended family, it was vindication of their conservative values and proof that traditional arrangements still provided the best outcomes for young women. But for Amina, learning about her engagement during a family dinner where her opinion was neither requested nor considered, the arrangement felt like a death sentence for every dream she had carefully constructed. "I won't do it," Amina told her parents that evening, her voice shaking with the courage it took to defy everything she had been taught about family obedience. "I'm 16 years old. I want to go to university. I want to build my career. I want to choose my own life." Her father's response was swift and final. "Your life belongs to this family, and this family has made its decision. You will marry Sheikh Mansour with gratitude and honor, or you will bring shame upon all of us." Sheikh Mansour bin Abdullah Al-Zahra represented everything Dubai's traditional elite valued, and international human rights organizations condemned in equal measure. Born in 1965 to one of the UAE's founding families, he had inherited not just vast oil wealth, but the absolute conviction that his cultural traditions superseded any modern legal constraints on his behavior. Educated at Islamic universities in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, Mansour spoke classical Arabic fluently and could recite the Quran from memory, but had deliberately avoided Western education that might have exposed him to concepts of individual rights or gender equality. His worldview was shaped entirely by interpretations of Islamic law that placed male authority above all other considerations. His first marriage in 1990 had produced 4 sons, but ended in divorce when his wife, Princess Layla, attempted to pursue a medical degree against his wishes. His second marriage in 2003 had lasted 12 years before his wife died under circumstances that family members never discussed publicly. At 58, Sheikh Mansour was seeking a third wife who would provide him with the submissive partnership that his position demanded. The negotiations between the Al-Zahra and Khalil families were conducted entirely between men, following traditions that treated marriage as a business transaction between family patriarchs. Sheikh Mansour's interest in Amina was based on reports of her intelligence, beauty, and most importantly, her virginity and lack of exposure to corrupting Western influences. "The girl has been properly raised," Sheikh Mansour told his advisors after reviewing Amina's family background. "She is young enough to be properly guided, intelligent enough to manage household affairs, and from a family that understands the importance of obedience and honor." The marriage contract, negotiated over 3 weeks of formal meetings, included provisions that would have been illegal under international law, but remained permissible under traditional Islamic jurisprudence as interpreted by Dubai's conservative religious authorities. Throughout the negotiation process, Amina's attempts to voice her objections were systematically silenced by family members who viewed her resistance as evidence of dangerous Western influence. Her requests to continue her education were dismissed as temporary confusion that marriage would cure. "She will learn to love her husband as all good wives do," Fatima assured Sheikh Mansour during one of their meetings. "Her intelligence will make her a better mother to your future sons." But Amina's private conversations with her younger sister Layla revealed the depth of her terror about the impending marriage. "I feel like I'm being sold," she confided during one of their late-night talks. "No one asks what I want, what I dream about, what I'm afraid of. I'm just a thing they're trading for money and status." News of the impending marriage between a 58-year-old sheikh and a 16-year-old girl attracted international attention, when Amina's Cambridge acceptance letter was leaked to British media by a sympathetic teacher. Human rights organizations began pressuring the UAE government to intervene, while conservative religious leaders defended the arrangement as culturally appropriate and religiously sanctioned. The controversy only strengthened Sheikh Mansour's resolve to proceed with the marriage quickly, before international pressure could interfere with his family's traditional rights. "Western governments have no authority over Islamic marriage laws," he declared in a rare public statement. "This union honors both families and follows customs that have guided our people for centuries." The wedding was scheduled for March 17, 2024, one day before Amina's planned departure for Cambridge, ensuring that her educational opportunities would be permanently foreclosed by her new role as Sheikh Mansour's wife. The 3 weeks leading to Amina's wedding transformed her family home into a prison where her every movement was monitored to prevent any attempt to escape her fate. Her passport was confiscated, her phone was taken away, and she was assigned a female companion. Her Aunt Khadija, whose real job was to ensure Amina couldn't contact Cambridge University or any outside authorities. The wedding preparations, costing over $8 million and involving international vendors, proceeded around Amina like an elaborate funeral arrangement. Designers fitted her for a custom bridal gown while she stood motionless, tears streaming down her face. Caterers planned menus for 800 guests, while Amina was forbidden from expressing preferences about her own celebration. "This is the happiest time of your life," Khadija would remind Amina during dress fittings. "Every girl dreams of marrying into royalty. You should be grateful that Allah has blessed you with such an opportunity." But Amina's private moments revealed a teenager facing the destruction of every dream she had carefully nurtured. Letters she wrote to Cambridge University, begging them to hold her scholarship, were intercepted and destroyed by family members who viewed her continued resistance as dangerous defiance. As the wedding date approached, Amina made increasingly desperate attempts to change her family's decision. She wrote letters to her father outlining her career ambitions, her desire to contribute to Dubai's development as an engineer, and her willingness to consider marriage after completing her education. "I could bring honor to our family through my achievements," she wrote in one intercepted letter. "Let me study for 4 years, then arrange whatever marriage you think is best. I promise I will be obedient after I have had the chance to use the intelligence Allah gave me." Her pleas were dismissed as temporary rebellion that marriage would cure. "Education has filled her head with unrealistic expectations," Omar told his wife. "Sheikh Mansour will help her understand her proper role as a wife and mother." 3 days before the wedding, Sheikh Mansour held a traditional bachelor celebration at his private estate, where his male relatives and business associates gathered to congratulate him on securing such a young, intelligent bride. The conversations, later revealed during police investigations, demonstrated his specific expectations about Amina's submission and his plans for consummating their marriage. "Young wives require firm guidance," Sheikh Mansour told his guests, his words captured by security systems he had forgotten were recording. "Western education teaches girls to question male authority, but traditional marriage remedies such confusion quickly." His detailed discussions about wedding night expectations, shared with male relatives who viewed such conversations as normal, revealed both his sense of absolute entitlement over Amina's body and his complete indifference to her consent or comfort. On March 15th, 2 days before her wedding, Amina made her final attempt to escape her fate. Using her younger sister's phone, she contacted the British Embassy in Dubai, explaining her situation and begging for intervention that might allow her to honor her Cambridge scholarship. The embassy's response was sympathetic but legally limited. While they opposed forced marriage, Amina was an Emirati citizen subject to local laws, and the marriage met the technical requirements of Dubai's legal system. "We cannot interfere with cultural practices that are legal under local law," the embassy counselor explained. "But if you ever need assistance after your marriage, We will do everything possible to help you." That evening, Amina made the decision that would seal both their fates. She would go through with the wedding ceremony to protect her family from shame, but she would refuse to consummate the marriage, hoping that time might allow her to convince Sheikh Mansour to let her pursue education alongside her wifely duties. It was a plan born of desperate hope and teenage naivety about the man she was about to marry. The Al-Zahra/Khalil wedding ceremony unfolded as one of Dubai's most lavish social events of the year, with 800 guests, international media coverage, and a display of wealth that reinforced the family's social status. Amina moved through the ceremony like a beautiful ghost, her designer gown concealing the terror that consumed her as each ritual brought her closer to a marriage she had never chosen. The nikah marriage contract was signed by Sheikh Mansour and Omar Khalil, while Amina sat silently beside them, her consent assumed rather than requested. Islamic law required her agreement, but the question was asked in Arabic by an imam who had been instructed to interpret silence as acceptance. Photographs from the ceremony, later used as evidence in the murder trial, showed Amina's hollow expression even as she performed the required rituals. Her younger sister Layla would later testify that Amina had whispered, "I'm so scared," during the ceremony, words that were dismissed by family members as normal pre-wedding nerves. The wedding reception continued the performance of happiness that concealed Amina's growing desperation. She danced when required, smiled for photographers, and accepted congratulations from guests who praised her family for securing such an advantageous match. But those closest to her noticed signs of her emotional state. Trembling hands when she cut the wedding cake, tears she claimed were joy. When relatives complimented her beauty, and her repeated requests to speak privately with her mother, requests that were denied to maintain the celebration's momentum. Sheikh Mansour's behavior during the reception would later be analyzed by forensic psychologists as evidence of his proprietary attitude toward his new bride. He spoke about Amina to male guests as if she were valuable property, discussing her intelligence and beauty as assets he had acquired rather than qualities belonging to an individual person. As the reception concluded near midnight, Amina was escorted to the bridal suite that had been prepared in Sheikh Mansour's private wing of the Al-Zahra estate. The room, decorated with roses and silk, was designed to create romantic ambience for what Islamic tradition considered the spiritual and physical culmination of marriage. Amina's female relatives helped her change from her ceremonial gown into traditional bridal lingerie, their conversations focusing on her duties as a new wife. "Be patient and obedient," her Aunt Khadija advised. "All women find marriage difficult at first, but submission brings peace and blessing." Left alone to await her husband, Amina spent her final moments of childhood praying for courage to refuse consummation, while knowing that such refusal violated every expectation of her role as Sheikh Mansour's wife. Sheikh Mansour entered the bridal suite at 1:15 a.m., his expectations shaped by decades of absolute authority over women and his conviction that Amina's resistance to the marriage had been teenage confusion that the ceremony had resolved. "You are my wife now," he told Amina as she sat on the edge of the bed, her entire body trembling with fear. "Allah has blessed us with this union, and it is time to fulfill our obligations to each other." Amina's response would trigger the violent confrontation that ended her life. "I need time. I'm only 16. I'm not ready for this part of marriage yet." Sheikh Mansour's reaction revealed the depth of his entitlement and his complete inability to accept any limitation on his marital rights. "You became ready when you accepted my proposal. Your body belongs to me now, as your obedience belongs to Allah." When Amina moved away from him, her refusal became the dishonor that, in Sheikh Mansour's worldview, required immediate and violent correction. What happened next in the bridal suite was captured by security cameras that Sheikh Mansour had installed to protect his valuable art collection, but forgotten were recording his wedding night. The footage would later provide prosecutors with unprecedented evidence of an honor killing, as it unfolded in real time. When Amina attempted to leave the bed and move to the sitting area of the suite, Sheikh Mansour grabbed her wrist with enough force to leave bruises that would be documented during the autopsy. "You will not dishonor me on our wedding night," he said, his voice rising to levels that would be clearly audible on the recordings. "Please, I just need more time," Amina replied, her voice breaking as she tried to free herself from his grip. "I want to be a good wife, but I'm scared. Can't we wait until I'm more comfortable?" Her request for time and comfort represented everything Sheikh Mansour viewed as Western corruption of traditional marriage roles. In his worldview, shaped by the most conservative interpretations of Islamic law, a wife's comfort was irrelevant to her husband's rights. The security footage showed Sheikh Mansour's escalating violence as Amina continued to resist his demands for immediate consummation. What began as grabbing evolved into slapping, then choking, as his rage at her disobedience overwhelmed any rational thought. "You have shamed me, shamed your family, and shamed Allah," Sheikh Mansour said as he struck Amina repeatedly. "I paid $5 million for a virgin bride, not a defiant Western girl who thinks she can dictate terms to her husband." Amina's attempts to defend herself, captured clearly on camera, would later be used by Sheikh Mansour's lawyers as evidence that she had attacked him, justifying his use of defensive force. The weapon that ended Amina's life was a ceremonial dagger that had been part of Sheikh Mansour's family for over 200 years, traditionally used in wedding ceremonies to symbolize the husband's role as protector and provider. The same blade that had blessed generations of Al-Zahra marriages became the instrument of honor killing when Amina's resistance triggered Sheikh Mansour's final rage. "You have forced me to choose between my honor and your life," Sheikh Mansour said as he raised the dagger, his words captured clearly by the audio system. "I choose honor." Amina Khalil died at 1:47 a.m. on March 18, 2024, less than 2 hours after her wedding ceremony, killed by the man who had promised to protect and cherish her. For 17 minutes after Amina's death, security cameras recorded Sheikh Mansour sitting beside her body, explaining to himself why his actions had been necessary and justified. These recordings would provide prosecutors with unprecedented insight into the psychological framework that enables honor killings. "She left me no choice," he repeated multiple times, his voice steady despite having just committed murder. "A man cannot allow his wife to dishonor him without consequences. This is what happens when Western ideas corrupt traditional marriage." His first phone call was not to emergency services, but to his lawyer, seeking advice on how to present Amina's death as justified defense of family honor rather than criminal murder. Sheikh Mansour's initial plan was to claim that Amina had died accidentally during their wedding night, perhaps from a heart condition triggered by the excitement of marriage. He spent over an hour staging the scene, cleaning blood, and preparing explanations that would protect him from criminal prosecution. But the same security system that had captured his family's most private moments for decades had also recorded his crime in detail that made any cover-up impossible. The discovery of Amina's body came when her younger sister, Layla, arrived at the Al-Zahra estate for the traditional post-wedding breakfast, a ceremony where the bride's family confirms the marriage's consummation and celebrates the union's success. Instead of finding her sister glowing with new married happiness, Layla discovered a crime scene that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Sheikh Mansour met Layla at the estate's entrance, his demeanor calm but his clothes showing signs of the previous night's violence. "There has been a terrible accident," he explained, his voice carefully modulated to suggest tragedy rather than crime. "Amina became very upset during our wedding night and injured herself before I could stop her." But when Layla insisted on seeing her sister, the scene in the bridal suite immediately contradicted Sheikh Mansour's explanation. Amina's body showed clear signs of violent assault. The ceremonial dagger lay beside the bed, and blood spatter patterns indicated a sustained attack rather than an accident. The Khalil family's reaction to Amina's death exposed the complex intersection of grief, cultural programming, and legal reality that defines honor-killing cases. Omar Khalil's initial response was to accept Sheikh Mansour's explanation and arrange for immediate burial according to Islamic tradition, which would have destroyed crucial forensic evidence. "This is Allah's will," Omar told his family as they gathered at the estate. "Amina has found peace, and we must accept that her death was part of his plan for our family." But Layla's insistence that her sister had been murdered, combined with her threat to contact international media, forced the family to consider the possibility that Sheikh Mansour's accident story was a cover-up for criminal behavior. Dubai Metropolitan Police arrived at the Al-Zahra estate at 8:45 a.m., initially expecting to investigate an accidental death during what should have been a celebration of marriage. Detective Captain Aisha Al-Mansouri, one of Dubai's few female homicide investigators, immediately recognized signs of violence that contradicted the family's explanation. "Accidental deaths don't involve ceremonial daggers and defensive wounds," Detective Al-Mansouri explained to her team as they secured the crime scene. "This young woman was murdered, and we need to determine whether cultural tradition will be used to justify criminal behavior." The investigation's most crucial breakthrough came when Detective Al-Mansouri discovered the security system that had recorded the entire wedding night encounter. The footage provided unprecedented evidence of an honor killing as it unfolded, making it impossible for Sheikh Mansour to maintain his accidental death story. News of Amina's death reached international media within hours, as Cambridge University's inquiry about her absence triggered a chain of communications that revealed the circumstances of her marriage and murder. Human rights organizations that had opposed the marriage now demanded criminal prosecution for what they clearly identified as an honor killing. The British Embassy, which had been unable to prevent Amina's forced marriage, now applied maximum pressure on UAE authorities to ensure that her murder was prosecuted as a criminal act rather than dismissed as a cultural matter. "A 16-year-old girl is dead because she tried to exercise basic human rights," British Ambassador Sarah Mitchell announced at a press conference. "The international community will be watching to ensure that justice prevails over tradition in this case." Faced with security footage that contradicted his accidental death story, Sheikh Mansour's legal team shifted to a defense based on traditional Islamic law and cultural justification for honor killings. His lawyers argued that Amina's refusal to consummate their marriage constituted a form of adultery that justified violent response under certain interpretations of Sharia law. "Our client acted within his rights as a husband confronted with willful disobedience and dishonor," his lead attorney announced. "Islamic law recognizes a husband's authority to correct his wife's behavior when she violates her marriage obligations." This defense strategy would ultimately lead to the most controversial honor-killing trial in UAE history. The State of Dubai versus Sheikh Mansour Al-Zahra became the most closely watched legal proceeding in UAE history, as prosecutors faced the unprecedented challenge of securing a murder conviction against a defendant claiming religious and cultural justification for honor killing. Chief Prosecutor Khalid Al-Zahra, no relation to the defendant, built his case around the security footage that showed premeditated violence against a child who had committed no crime beyond expressing fear about sexual intimacy. "This is not about honor," he announced during pre-trial hearings. "This is about a grown man murdering a frightened child because she asked for time and patience." The prosecution's strategy focused on Amina's age, her lack of genuine consent to the marriage, and the excessive violence Sheikh Mansour used against someone who posed no physical threat to him. International law experts were called to testify about the legal distinction between cultural practice and criminal murder. Sheikh Mansour's defense team, led by prominent Islamic law scholar Dr. Ahmed Al-Rashid, argued that their client's actions fell within the bounds of traditional marriage rights as understood by conservative Islamic jurisprudence. They claimed that Amina's refusal to consummate the marriage constituted a form of rebellion that justified corrective force under certain interpretations of religious law. Our client acted according to traditions that have governed Islamic marriage for over 1,400 years, Dr. Al-Rashid argued. Western legal concepts cannot be applied to judge behavior that was culturally appropriate and religiously sanctioned. The defense strategy included character witnesses who testified about Sheikh Mansour's reputation as a devout Muslim and respected community leader, arguing that his actions reflected religious conviction rather than criminal intent. The trial attracted attention from international human rights organizations, Islamic legal scholars, and women's rights advocates who recognized its potential to establish important precedents for honor-killing prosecutions throughout the Middle East. Dr. Amina Wadud, a prominent Islamic feminist scholar, testified for the prosecution that contemporary Islamic law does not justify violence against wives who request patience or time before sexual intimacy. The Quran emphasizes kindness, mercy, and mutual respect in marriage, she explained. Honor killing violates the fundamental Islamic principle that only Allah has the right to take life. But conservative religious authorities supported Sheikh Mansour's defense, arguing that Western interference in Islamic legal matters represented cultural imperialism that threatened traditional family structures. The trial's most emotional moment came when Amina Khalil testified about her sister's fears, dreams, and final desperate attempts to delay a marriage she was too young to handle psychologically or physically. Amina wasn't disobedient or dishonorable, Layla told the court through tears. She was a scared child who asked for time to adjust to marriage with a man older than our father. She wanted to be a good wife, but she also wanted to live long enough to become one. Layla's testimony included details about Amina's Cambridge scholarship, her engineering dreams, and her willingness to consider marriage after completing her education, evidence that contradicted defense claims about her supposed corruption by Western values. Dr. Sarah Hassan, a child psychologist specializing in forced marriage trauma, testified about the psychological impact of arranged marriage on adolescents and the developmental reasons why 16-year-olds cannot provide meaningful consent to marriage with much older men. Amina's request for time and her fear of immediate sexual intimacy were normal psychological responses for someone her age, Dr. Hassan explained. Her behavior represented healthy self-preservation instincts, not dishonor or disobedience. This testimony directly challenged defense arguments that Amina's resistance justified violent correction. After 6 days of deliberation that divided Dubai's legal and religious communities, the Dubai Criminal Court delivered a verdict that would reshape honor-killing prosecutions throughout the UAE. Judge Mohammed Al-Maktoum found Sheikh Mansour Al-Zahra guilty of premeditated murder, rejecting cultural and religious justifications for the killing of his 16-year-old bride. While this court respects Islamic law and Emirati cultural traditions, Judge Al-Maktoum stated as he delivered the verdict, neither religious doctrine nor cultural practice justifies the murder of a child who committed no crime beyond expressing fear about sexual intimacy with a much older husband. The courtroom erupted as the verdict was announced, with Amina's family sobbing in relief while Sheikh Mansour's supporters shouted protests about Western interference in Islamic legal matters. Sheikh Mansour was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, the harshest sentence available under UAE law for honor killings. The court also ordered him to pay $10 million in blood money to Amina's family, though Layla announced that any funds received would be donated to organizations fighting forced marriage. The verdict established crucial legal precedents that would influence honor-killing cases throughout the Middle East. For the first time in UAE legal history, a court ruled that cultural tradition and religious interpretation could not justify the murder of family members, particularly children forced into marriages they were too young to understand or consent to meaningfully. This verdict sends a clear message that honor killings will be prosecuted as murder regardless of the perpetrator's social status or religious justifications, announced UAE Attorney General Fatima Al-Zahra after the sentencing. International human rights organizations hailed the verdict as a breakthrough moment for women's rights in the Gulf region, while conservative religious leaders criticized it as Western interference in Islamic family law. Sheikh Mansour's reaction to his conviction revealed the depth of his conviction that he had acted appropriately according to traditional values. "I have been convicted by a legal system that values Western ideas above Islamic law," he announced before being led to prison. "History will vindicate my actions as those of a man who defended his honor and his family's reputation." His complete lack of remorse for Amina's death, even when faced with life imprisonment, demonstrated the psychological framework that enables honor killings and the difficulty of changing deeply held cultural beliefs through legal prosecution alone.